why would we try to overcomplicate something that doesn't need to be overcomplicated? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Truth Talks, the podcast that brings you real strategies for sustainable fitness transformation. If you joined us last week, you would have noticed that we covered what to eat before your workout. Today, we're going to flip the switch and look at what to eat after your workouts, because that is also important. So, Paris, what do you think about that?
I think it's good. We're making a workout sandwich. We're having the slice of bread before, then the workout, and then another slice of bread after. So we're completing the puzzle of the workout sandwich by continuing this discussion.
I love a good sandwich. And by the end of this episode, you might even find out if a sandwich is a good post-workout meal.
That is true.
So sandwich within a sandwich. Sandwichception. All right, so let's just dive right into this one. It's going to be fairly straightforward, but what we're going to do is we're going to walk through a little bit of myth busting to kick things off, talking about post-workout meal timing. Then we're going to help you understand exactly what your priorities should be in terms of nutrition post-workout, both in terms of what, why, and how much. And then we'll kind of give you some recommendations for practical strategies and tips and maybe some suggestions on what to eat in different contexts. All right, without further ado, should we just go for it?
Sounds good to me. Let's do this.
Let's start with that myth busting. When I think of post-workout meals, and I think about the subtopic within that that's talked about most frequently, I think about that, what we call the anabolic window, or what has often been referred to as the anabolic window. The idea of like, I only have so much time after my workout that I need to get my meal in. Otherwise it's all wasted, right? Like kind of that I don't want to say panic, but it's almost like it's kind of stressful.
Yeah.
Frantic. Yeah. Can we actually talk about whether that frantic post-workout timing is actually worth it?
Yeah, so people are so scared that if they don't slam the protein shake 30 seconds after, re-racking the dumbbells, that their workout is going to be erased in terms of its productiveness or effectiveness. And that's just not the case. And like your gains are not just going to disappear just because, you missed that 5-minute window where you had to slam the protein shake. So I think we definitely need to bust that myth. I think that resulted from supplement companies potentially and the way they were advertising like whey protein shakes back in the day. Just the language that they used and the verbiage kind of made people think, oh my gosh, like I have to do this like right now after my workout or else it's wasted.
And whey protein is fast digesting. So that makes sense that if people are looking for like a fast way to like get in protein post-workout, whey obviously supports that. Mm-hmm. What is important though to remember is like, it doesn't have to be 5 minutes after. Like when we actually look at the science, you actually have longer than you might think you do. Can you actually talk a little bit about like how much time do we have? Is 5 minutes actually 10 minutes or is it all day long?
Yeah. So if we think about the post-workout window, the way I like to phrase it to clients and just a general recommendation is like within 2 hours, we want to be having that post-workout meal. So that definitely does not need to be immediately post-workout. And you got to think of it, our muscles are definitely more receptive post-training, but it's not like that only lasts for 5 minutes and then all of a sudden they lose their receptiveness. So it's kind of like within that 2-hour time period, I like to say get in that post-workout meal. And then if you're training fasted in the morning based on, preference or whatever reason why, then you want to get it, I would say ideally within like 1 hour post training.
Yeah. I think when you start to see it as, hey, I have 2 hours, it gives you a lot of relief, right? Because in 2 hours, you can leave the gym, you can take a shower, you can actually prepare food if you need to, right? Like, so it really just reduces that amount of like stress that you can put on yourself to being like, oh my God, I have to prioritize this above anything else. And it gives you a lot more leeway. I do like though that you brought up the fact that if you're training fasted, you might benefit from moving up that meal a little bit sooner after your workout. It's a good point to acknowledge. It doesn't mean that you have to have more stress about getting in that 5 minutes. But the reason being is, let's say you have eaten a pre-workout meal based on like what we covered in last week's episode, you will have those nutrients in your body still. Like assuming your workout lasts maybe an hour and a half tops. Like it's not like all of a sudden all of those nutrients are gone. So the need to replenish isn't quite as high if you have eaten a pre-workout meal versus if you haven't, then the post-workout meal becomes much more important in terms of providing your body with those nutrients that you need.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. That's a good point. And then also, even though we say like 2 hours post workout, we got to remember when we train hard, our body's even more receptive for even like a day, day and a half later, even, right? It's
Yeah.
not like the recovery process is like, okay, 2 hours and then boom, that's it. Gates are closed. It's, we got to remember that things are still getting replenished several hours and even like day, day and a half, like that far
Yeah.
time window post workout.
A great way to actually like hit that point home is really when you think about like, I don't feel recovered 2 hours after my workout. Sometimes
Yeah.
I don't even feel the effects of it until later than 2 hours or the next day, right? So thinking about that, it's a nice reminder that like that recovery process is longer. When we feel that soreness the next day, our body is still receptive to recovery nutrients
Yes.
at that time period within that recovery window, which is a lot broader. So I think this is where we can kind of outline a little bit of the difference between quote unquote optimal and
Mm-hmm.
productive.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to see things as like all or nothing. It's like either I'm doing everything perfectly or it doesn't count. And that's just something that it rings true in the fitness industry. For some reason, that ideology happens all the time. The 2 hours is what we would consider optimal. If it is practical for you to get in a post workout meal within 2 hours, amazing, right? Like that's great. It's super, it might be ideal. But it doesn't mean that having a post workout meal 3 hours after your workout all of a sudden is unproductive. It is still productive. You are still replenishing the nutrients your body needs after a workout. And I think it's really important for us to keep that in mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when we look at things like science, it gives us general kind of guidelines that we can take. Every, let's say every study is another hint that we get towards like the
Mm.
right directionality with things. So I
I
think
love
in
that. It's
our
like a game of Clue.
yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
So in our fitness journey, we have to think about how can we get the best directionality with our actions instead of saying like what is going to be the most optimal, because we actually don't know what is the most optimal. There's like an extreme amount of variables to control in this. So yeah, just something to think about. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of peace of mind. If you were previously stressing about slamming that shake, as soon as the dumbbells are re-racked, now you now you don't have to worry as much.
That's awesome. So, key takeaway: the myth of slamming a protein shake within 5 minutes of your workout has been busted. Focus instead on having a complete meal, which we'll tell you more about in a minute, within 2 hours. And if you cannot get it in within 2 hours, don't stress too much.
Love it.
Is that a fair summary?
Yep.
Okay, amazing. So we've covered timing. Now we got to move into, okay, well, what are we actually eating? Because we've been talking about slamming protein shakes. And I think that's the thing that people have in their mind all the time is like post-workout. And like you were saying, if you actually read the tub on your protein powder, it usually says have within 30 minutes of your workout, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the guidelines on the back of the container. So yes, kind of protein, but let's actually explain what, why, how much. And then we'll also talk about other nutrition priorities post-workout.
Yeah, that's good. So I think just like we said in our pre-workout eating discussion, we said the key things you want to think about are protein and carbohydrates. It's not to say that you can't have fats. It's just that they might, logically speaking, have less of a benefit or less of a need in that post-workout or pre-workout window. So when we think about prioritizing a hit of protein and a hit of carbs, starting with protein, we like to say, okay, what is the main purpose? Well, we want to help our muscles recover, and we know protein is great for that. Our muscles are going to be sensitive to uptaking amino acids, which just means the building blocks of protein to help repair and or grow our muscle tissue.
I think what's really important here is that people often overlook is we kind of generally as a society know protein is important, but we don't often think about why it's important post-workout. And what you talked about there with repair is the critical part.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we resistance train, because we're talking about resistance training today, we're not necessarily talking about long runs, although there's some truth to that too. But when we resistance train, we actually cause stress on our muscles. We kind of actually break down the muscle in a way, right? So we need that protein to repair it. That's really the core function. So instead of just being like, I'm slamming a protein shake because that's what I'm supposed to do, actually think about like what role is protein playing in that recovery process post-workout.
Exactly. It's kind of kickstarting muscle protein synthesis, which is essentially just reparation and growth of muscle tissue.
Right.
So
yeah, and I love that you said reparation and growth because it's important regardless of whether you are just recovering from a workout and you maybe just have like overall body composition maintenance goals or you're trying to grow, right? So whether or not you have a muscle building goal explicitly, the protein is still important.
yeah, I love it. And then in terms of the amount of
Wait,
protein, I guess would be the next
yeah,
thing.
that's what I was going to ask you
Yeah.
before we move. Yeah, we need to cover
So
off that because
yeah,
I don't know. I did a reel on this actually the other day. Like I see all these protein bars and they're like 15 grams of protein. Is
yes,
that enough post workout?
protein bars, quote unquote. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say, like, as a general rule of thumb, try to get in at least 20 grams of protein in that post workout meal. So let's say, just say 20 plus grams of protein in that meal, because we know that's adequate in terms of stimulating that thing I mentioned called muscle protein synthesis. So that's what I would say in terms of the quantity.
Amazing. I think we covered protein. We talked about the fact that it's protein. We talked about how much and we talked about why. I do want to just quickly, before we move into the second part, which is carbs, cover off maybe some easy protein sources post workout.
Sure.
And this is not an exhaustive list at all because there's so many protein sources out there. But I just think people can recognize that it goes beyond just having a protein shake. Like all protein sources in this case are going to do the job.
Yes, literally
right?
any good protein source here.
Yeah, exactly. So if you are on the go and you packed yourself a sandwich, haha, I told you sandwiches are going to come back up.
Yeah.
And you've put enough turkey that in your sandwich that equates to 20 grams, that's a great option, right? If you're going back home and you're cooking yourself a nice dinner and you want to have like chicken, that's the standard, right?
Mhm.
But it can be salmon, it can be fish, it can be a can of tuna, it can be an omelet. That as long as it has 20 plus grams of protein in the serving, it can be any protein source. And I know that sounds oversimplistic, but I do think it's important.
But like, we don't need to overcomplicate it. Like, straight up is. It
Yeah.
is simple.
Right. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be a protein shake. If it is, great. And there's a convenience aspect to that.
Yeah.
But if it's not, that's okay too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good points. Good points.
Do you want to cover off carbs next? That was
Yeah.
the other priority you said, right?
Yeah. So carbs, I think, is a little less, like, I don't know, I can say it a little less straight. I mean, obviously the benefits we know are pretty clear cut, but in terms of the amounts, I'm not going to give like absolute specific, this is, what to do. But I think in terms of carbs, we got to think of it as restoring the glycogen stores, or replenishing the glycogen stores in our muscles. Our muscles store carbs. That's one of their primary energy sources. And that's called glycogen. Okay, stored carbohydrates. And obviously post training, we want to replenish that. So that's the purpose of getting in carbohydrates post training. However, that is
we use it, right? We use it up during our training sessions.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
That's why you need to replenish it, is because, like Paris said, glycogen is the primary source of energy for your muscles during the workout. So you use that.
Mhm.
So the role of the post-workout carb is to build it back up again.
Exactly. And as I said, the time course is not just 2 hours. Like, again, it's going to feed into even like the next day. It's not like, if you miss this window, then you can't replenish your glycogen stores. Like, that's something that's going to happen, sequentially over time. But like, that's the main purpose, because we want to make sure we set ourselves up for success for our next training session. Like, let's say we're training tomorrow. Like, we want to make sure, okay, we have more glycogen for that session so we can perform well. Something I also think about is, like, when I was playing a lot of rugby, or when I would play, I would have maybe dry land training for rugby, and then I would have even volleyball practice like later on, or something like that. So I was doing kind of 2-a-days in terms of training. That's when this post-workout window becomes more important for glycogen replenishment, if you want to perform in the subsequent training session that day.
That's such a good point, because you need more immediately readily available glycogen, again, because you're about to go use it up once more, right? Like, I love that you address that. I think that's so important.
Yeah, so that's the case where maybe you'll go to more simple sugars and stuff like that to hit like a little bit quicker with the replenishment, if you're doing the 2-a-day training. But for our purposes, again, it's going to be replenished sequentially over just the next several meals that you have. So it's not like we don't need to stress about it as much when we're not doing twice-a-day training.
Yeah. When we are thinking about carb intake, like, people maybe do have different carb requirements based on, the intensity of their training session, the duration of their training session, their overall daily carb goals. But I will say, the ISSN, which is the International Society of Sports Nutrition, they do suggest kind of a minimum amount of 0.5 to 1 gram per kilogram of body weight. So for myself, let's say I'm 55, 56 kgs, somewhere around that. And that would be about, let's say 27 to 56 grams of carbs for me in that post-workout meal.
I think that's I like that.
Yeah, I think it's, and like you said, it's not like, we don't want to make firm recommendations because there's too much nuance around it, but I want to give people like a starting point, because I think people have different definitions of what enough carbs actually is.
Yes.
And so just making sure that, like, you choosing to have like half a banana might not actually be enough. Yes, it's
Mm-hmm.
carbs, but it might not actually be enough to
Mm-hmm.
really replenish. But on the flip side of that, you don't have to smash a whole pizza either.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Even though that'd be
So
fun.
I would love to smash a whole pizza right now. It feels even better after a workout.
Yeah.
But just point being of like, we can use that as like a loose guideline. And again, we're talking today about resistance training.
Yes.
Like Paris said, if you are kind of an athlete who's doing 2 different sessions in a day, or if your training was endurance based, let's say you went for a run, or you're doing like high intensity interval training, or you're doing more sport specific training, those requirements are going to be different.
Potentially. Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Still get carbs in. The role is the same, but in terms of the
Principles
amount you
remain the
have
same.
might be different.
Yes.
Yeah. Quick, easy carb sources. Do we want to address that? Because you did make a comment on like maybe simple carbs if you're doing 2 workouts in a day. Does it matter? Does the carb source we choose actually matter? Let's
I
actually
honestly
just answer
don't
that.
even. I don't really think it does, because like getting carbs in regardless, unless again you're doing twice a day, then maybe you want more simple carbs, like maybe you have a Gatorade or a Rice Krispie Square or like cereal or like candy or something.
Yeah, something that's fast to digest.
Yes, but like for example, if you're in a fat loss phase, hunger and satiety are going to be more important than how quickly your carbs are going to get this deposited in the muscle, right? So in that case, you might choose slower digesting carb sources like potatoes or something like that. So I think it doesn't really matter, but like, I mean, hey, whatever's going to pair well with your protein source, right? So
yeah, that's true. That's such a good point. Like
yeah.
I'm trying to think. Like I have not yet ever put chicken in oatmeal. I don't think I'm going to go there anytime soon.
I don't want to say I haven't done it, because I have, but hashtag competition prep stuff.
Oh no. Okay, I don't even want to know what that tastes like. But like maybe chicken and rice or chicken and potatoes versus if it's your breakfast that you're having, maybe that actually is like oats to go with a protein shake or something like that, right? So just pick the carb source that appeals to you. Don't worry too much about finding the ideal carb source. It really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you're supplying glycogen stores to your body.
Yeah. Do you want to hear what I eat post-workout right now, though, in my building case?
Sure. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
going to sound really weird. So I do a smoothie of a scoop of protein, maybe scoop and a half or something like that, and then some frozen berries. And with almond milk, I blend that up. And then I actually have like 7 rice cakes on the side that I actually will dip into the smoothie. So it's like...
Please tell me it's not white cheddar rice cakes at least.
No. Just plain rice cakes. I'll like break them in half and dip them into the smoothie and eat them like that.
So you're making like a protein smoothie dip?
It's like an acai bowl, if you think.
Oh, yeah. Sure. We can call anything something fancy and it just automatically sounds better.
It checked my boxes if you think about all those. Like what, 7 times how many grams carbs per rice cake? 7?
7?
So
7 to
49
8,
grams of carbs plus the carbs in the berries plus then the hit of proteins maybe like 35 grams. So like
it's pretty
checks
good.
some of my
That
boxes.
checks the boxes, right? It can be as simple or as complex as you need it to be.
Yeah.
Right?
Anyways,
point being, get enough protein in, 20 plus grams, choose a carb source, and you're pretty much good to go, right? Like it doesn't really need to be more complicated than that.
Exactly.
It gives you a lot of flexibility too, in terms of like whatever you feel like that day or whatever you happen to have in the fridge. I'll give a personal example. Is like yesterday, I was going to work out in the morning. So I actually did train fasted, minus I did have 2 rice cakes right before, but pretty close to fasted. And I was dropping off Toby, my dog, at the groomers, going to do my workout, then going back to pick him up. But I knew that there was also going to be a time I still had to wait for him for about an hour or so. I went to a coffee shop. So I was like, okay, well, what are my nutrition priorities? Protein, right? So I had one of those ready to drink protein shakes in the fridge. So I brought that with me. It's got a screw cap. I didn't have to worry about the powder or finding water or any of that. So just brought one of those ready to drink shakes. And then I actually brought an apple and a Cliff Bar because my carb targets are higher right now, so I could actually lean on the higher end by having 2 carb sources, but they were both easily portable. Does that mean that it's like this amazingly glorified meal? Absolutely not. Was it convenient and actually filled me up and did the job post-workout? Yes, it did.
So awesome. I like that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. So when it comes to nutrition priorities, summary, protein, carbs, keep it simple.
Yes.
You said off the top, like fats are not necessarily much of a priority because they don't necessarily have an immediate role post-workout. So that's great. And we won't get into that too much. The other thing that I'm going to bring up, because I know you're a fan of it, is hydration. I mean, everybody should be a fan of it, but you do a good job of talking about it. Hydration. Is that something we should be paying attention to post-workout?
Yeah, I definitely think post-workout, we want to get some water in. And I think just both pre and post-workout, it's a good idea to get salt and water. Okay. And I know I talked about in the pre-workout kind of a discussion about like significance of water, but it's just a good idea to, if you can get a little bit of salt and definitely a good hit of water post-workout, like, you may as well.
Yeah. So just don't ignore it, right?
Yeah.
Make sure
Yeah,
hydration is there
exactly.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. One thing I do want to talk about is, does your post-workout nutrition requirements change based on your physique goals? So if you are in a fat loss phase versus a muscle building phase, does that change our priorities at all?
I don't think so. Really, I really don't think so. Maybe I'll lean towards recommending that it matters in terms of the timing slightly more if you're deep into a deficit. You want to give your body some stuff post training,
Mm-hmm.
just because you're in a more depleted state. So I'd say, okay, maybe, slide up that post workout eating window a little bit. Compared to when you're in a gaining phase, you always have nutrients just floating around
Yeah.
and stored, and like you're good,
Yeah,
But
like if you're eating in a calorie surplus overall, then your body has energy availability. Or also, like if you are in a fat loss phase, but you are starting a little bit heavier,
Mhm.
you also you're not necessarily quote unquote as depleted as somebody who's
Yeah.
really lean and in a fat loss phase.
Exactly. So the leaner you are, the deeper you are into the fat loss phase, and the less food you're on, maybe we want to slide up that post workout window a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But overall, I think we just wanted to acknowledge today that like
Shouldn't change.
a lot of the times the topics we talk about are like, it depends on this context, or it varies from context to context. When it comes to post-workout nutrition, your priorities pretty much are always going to be the same. Get some protein in, get some carbs in. And it really is, I mean, I know we keep saying like it sounds simple, but that kind of is what it is, right?
People way overcomplicate
They
stuff.
overcomplicate it. And it doesn't matter how much muscle you're trying to build, whether you're a man or a woman, like this stuff is just consistent. Post-workout nutrition is consistently protein, more than 20 grams, carb source of your choice. The other question I have for you is, does it change depending on the time of day you work out?
No.
There we go. Cool. Just had to
Easy.
say it.
Yeah.
Again, I want to just keep it really focused on
Yeah.
like, this is really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think the only thing to keep in mind is what you said earlier. If you're training fasted in the morning, then maybe you want to prioritize getting in that post-workout meal sooner, but it doesn't change necessarily the composition or the priorities within that meal.
Exactly.
So just another point of like, stays the same, guys. If you're training morning, afternoon, evening, maybe the meal you choose is different. Like, if you're training and then your post-workout meal is dinner, might look different than if your post-workout meal is breakfast.
Right.
But the guidelines are the same.
Guidelines. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Love it.
Amazing. So this one's pretty tight, right? Because like we said, it's very straightforward. We don't need to go on and on. Thank you for tuning in so far. What we're going to do to start kind of wrapping things up is give you some important context and then leave you with our favorite thing, our mindset shifts. So the important context I do want to talk about is, if you do not have your total daily intake in check, meaning your eating structure is all over the place, you don't know how much protein you're eating in a day, you maybe have carbs some day and not other days, you might not necessarily need to yet worry about your post-workout nutrition. At the end of the day, your post-workout nutrition, yes, it has those clear benefits for recovery, repair, replenishment that we talked about, but it is still meant to be part of your total day, right? So when we talk about, eating protein and how much carbs we should have, that all ladders back up to your total day of eating. So I say this not to diminish the role of post-workout meals, because I think we've done a good job of explaining why they're important. But as a nod to those of you who might be overly fixated on that one meal, just to remind you that it is important, first and foremost, to figure out your total daily intake first.
Great point. I'm so glad we said this, and I hope that people take that away if there's one thing from this podcast, because a lot of these nutrition questions that we get, you have to have the box checked of having your daily totals checked off first. Like you need to have those, you complete and already taken care of before these questions even matter. Because you could nail the post-workout meal, but if your totals are off, you're not going to see any results. So we're focusing on we're putting the cart before the horse with a lot of nutrition questions that get frequently asked. So it's like daily totals first, then you can make your way down the hierarchy of importance.
Yeah, so I think if you are trying to figure out what role post-workout nutrition plays in terms of your day, think about it this way, is like, if you have a post-workout goal in terms of the amount of protein, how does that actually fit your total daily protein requirement? right? So how much of that total day do you want to allocate to your post-workout meal based on what's practical for you, based on what protein sources you're choosing for you? But if you don't actually know how much protein you're getting in your total day, how much you should be getting in your total day, send us a DM because we can help you with that. But you need to resolve that first and figure out where is that total protein going to come from over the course of your day before you worry about, is this 25 or 30 grams in this post-workout meal?
Exactly. Love it.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. Do you want to cover the mindset shift for today?
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on it a little bit at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like the workout wasn't a waste of time and effort if you didn't get that like protein shake within 5 minutes. So I think it's more just realizing the bigger picture, and it's like removing the stress about getting it in right away, and that post workout window needing to be like extremely close to when you finish your workout. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's it. We tried to keep this one simple because, like, honestly,
it is.
why would we try to overcomplicate something that doesn't
No.
need to be overcomplicated?
Yeah.
So hopefully you found this beneficial. Let's just focus on thinking about post-workout meals as an opportunity to be productive at maximizing the impact of our workouts and contributing to our total daily nutrition.
Awesome. Love it.
Okay, we did it.
Yeah.
If you have a favorite post-workout meal, we would actually love to know what it is. If it's, I'm going to say creative, with maybe a little bit quote unquote creative like Paris's with his smoothie rice cake dip. If it's something like that, or if it's something, more straightforward like chicken and rice, we'd love to hear it. So please drop that either in the comments below or reach out to us on Instagram. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this. If you have any questions about your own post-workout meals, we're also here to help guide your nutrition. Likewise, if you want to figure out how that post-workout meal actually fits into your total day, we can strategize together. That's what we do with our clients, and we love to do it every single day. So without further ado, we will leave you for this week, and we will be back in your feeds with another episode of Truth Talks next Monday. Have a great week ahead.
Take care.